Stories to be told, treasures to be found, silver and gold, dollars and pounds, never worth more than the stories of a town.
In the final decade of the 19th century, economic storm clouds were congregating on every horizon. The money markets from London to New York to Melbourne were nervous. Just when the world seemed to have run out of Eldorados, one more appeared in Western Australia, and a town called Kalgoorlie was born.
The gold rush here not only created towns like Kalgoorlie, but gave Western Australia the impetus it needed to really get established. So much wealth came from mines like these that many argue that it helped to soften the depression in Australia that was gripping the rest of the world in the 1890s.
In 1893, a bloke called Paddy Hannon and a couple of mates were forced to camp out unexpectedly after one of their horses lost a shoe. The next morning, after a bit of a fossick, they discovered a plentiful supply of alluvial gold nuggets.
In fact, the gold rush had already begun in Western Australia, here at Kalgoorlie in 1892, just east of Kalgoorlie. And on the 17th of June, 1893, Paddy strode down the street here with a pocket full of gold and a sense of purpose. Paddy's path to Western Australia was not an unusual one. He left County Clare in Ireland as a 21-year-old and ended up in Ballarat on the goldfields in 1862. Now, 30 years later, even though he and his mates were over 50 years old, they'd left the declining goldfields of Victoria to find another pot of gold, and they came here to this very counter in the mining registry at Kalgoorlie, which still operates today, to register their claim.
Paddy and his crew never reaped the rewards of one of the great gold discoveries of the century. Others made far more successful strikes. Within 3 days, an estimated 700 men were prospecting in the area of Hannon's find, leading to the discovery of the Golden Mile, the richest square mile of gold on Earth. And very quickly, the town of Kalgoorlie took shape.
In 1893, Western Australia had only been administering its own affairs for 3 years. In fact, it was the least developed of all the Australian colonies. The gold rush in Kalgoorlie was to change that state of affairs dramatically.
By 1896, in an unprecedented trading frenzy, 690 mining companies associated with the Eastern Goldfields had floated on the London Stock Exchange. Some 50,000 Europeans were now residing in the goldfields. But this was creating its own problems, the major one being lack of water. Sanitation on the goldfields was primitive at best. Disease was rife, and distributing water from the wells was cumbersome and expensive. So to another statue and another Irishman. C.Y. O'Connor had left Ireland and made his reputation in New Zealand as the chief engineer for public works. Following a disagreement with the government, O'Connor resigned and moved his family to Western Australia, where in 1891 he was appointed Engineer-in-Chief of Public Works and Manager of Railways. Western Australia was a small colony with big problems. While O'Connor sorted out port and railway issues, it was the rapid succession of gold discoveries east that continued to rock the colony. They needed water desperately.
No small ask. The solution, according to C.Y. O'Connor, was in 2 large water storage facilities, lifting the water nearly 400 metres, channeling it in a pipeline over 550 kilometres long.
In terms of distance and height, this hydraulic engineering scheme surpassed any in existence at the time. It took less than 5 years to complete, but for C.Y. O'Connor it was an awful time. He came under severe criticism from politicians and the press, as his scheme was described as foolhardy and a waste of public money. Sadly, as the scheme neared completion, C.Y. O'Connor took his own life. His last written words were, "I fear that my brain is suffering and I am in great fear of what effect all this worry will have upon me. I have lost control of my thoughts. The Kalgoorlie scheme is all right. I could finish it if I got a chance, and protection from misrepresentation. But there's no hope for that now."
But he did have some support, chiefly the Premier of the state, Sir John Forrest, who in 1903 was on this very spot to finally turn the taps on, releasing water into this vast reservoir here to feed the town below.
The Premier said in his speech, "Future generations, I am certain, will think of us and bless us for our far-seeing patriotism, and it will be said of us, as Isaiah said of old, they made a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert." C.Y. O'Connor is now regarded as one of the founding fathers of Western Australia. Another of the towns to appear around Kalgoorlie was Gwalia. It became Western Australia's second largest gold mine, in no small part due to the efforts of its manager, a young mining engineer called Herbert Hoover. Hoover spent most of his time in Gwalia. When he did visit Kalgoorlie, Hoover would check into the Palace Hotel. At the time, it was one of the finest establishments in the state. It cost a staggering £17,000 and was the first hotel to get electricity.
No wonder he liked staying here. His affection for a barmaid who worked at the hotel might have had something to do with it as well. Apparently, he was so broken-hearted when he left Kalgoorlie that he sent back this extraordinary ornate mirror as a gift for her. It still resides in the hotel today.
Hoover became the 31st President of the United States in 1929. But he had very fond memories of his time in the west of Australia.
Hoover was lucky to find a girlfriend. Goldfields weren't a place for women. Men vastly outnumbered them. And this created all sorts of unique social concerns.
Prostitutes moved into various parts of Kalgoorlie and Boulder. In an attempt by the council to designate a red light district, they introduced a containment policy. The now infamous Hay Street was created and is still home to some of Australia's most original and oldest operating brothels. Before the First World War, mine work at Kalgoorlie and in the area was principally above ground. But from the 1920s through to the 1960s, the work moved underground as prospectors and companies followed the veins of the Golden Mile deeper and deeper. By the 1960s, the gold seemed to be running out. And then along came an entrepreneur called Alan Bond, and mining in Kalgoorlie was again going to change dramatically.
Yeah, Bondi had the idea initially in the early ages to combine all the mines together. I think the main reason the Golden Mile is sustainable at the moment is because we are still here with this large operation working. If we still had the 30 or 40 different little companies around the place, it wouldn't be as sustainable as it is now. I think it provides stability for Kalgoorlie. Having the mine on the doorstep certainly provides workforce. It also provides a lot of economic contribution back to town. I think last year we contributed about $255 million just to the local community.
75% of Australia's gold still comes from Kalgoorlie, and it's that relentless flow of this precious metal that has forged this Australian icon town.